Welcome to Dreadful Screams. Turn off your lights. Close your doors. Because sometimes what watches you from afar isn't waiting to be found. Tonight's story is called The House Across the Field. My name is Lena Carver. I was 26 when I inherited my grandmother's old farmhouse, a lonely place sitting at the edge of a long, empty field in northern Wyoming. It wasn't much to look at. Chipped paint, creaking floors, and windows that whistled when the wind passed through, but I needed a change. After years of city noise, the silence felt healing. At least it did at first. My grandmother's property sat on a wide stretch of land, and across that land, maybe a quarter-mile away, stood another house, smaller, darker, abandoned-looking. Grandma had always called it the Miller place. She told me never to go near it. Some places, she'd say, just don't want to be remembered. The first night I stayed there, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. Every pop of the old wooden frame sounded like footsteps. Around 2 a.m., I looked out the kitchen window, just for something to focus on. And that's when I saw it, a faint light in the window of the house across the field. It flickered, like the glow of a candle. I thought maybe it was a reflection or lightning, but the sky was clear. Then the light moved, almost like someone walking slowly past the window, carrying it. I stared for a long time before pulling the curtain shut. It was probably nothing. Just some old wiring, right? But the next night, it happened again. Every night, just after 2 a.m., the same soft flicker appeared in that window. I started recording with my phone from my porch, but when I played it back, the footage was blank, pitch black, like the house didn't exist at all. One evening, I called the county office to ask about the property. The clerk on the other, and paused when I gave the address. Then she said, "Ma'am, that lot's been empty for 22 years. The house burned down in '03. I froze. Empty? I could see the house right now from my porch. That night I dreamed of my grandmother standing in the field, staring toward that same house. She kept whispering, 'Don't let it call you.' I woke up to the sound of knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on my front door. I looked through the peephole. No one. Just the moonlight over the snow. Then I saw it again. The light across the field. This time, it wasn't flickering in a window. It was standing in the field itself, halfway between the 2 houses, a small, moving glow, like someone carrying a lantern and walking toward me. I should have locked the door, called the police, something, but instead I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The wind was sharp, freezing my breath. The glow in the field stopped moving. Then I heard something, faint, almost carried by the wind, a woman's voice. "You shouldn't be here." I ran back inside and locked the door. The voice was close now, too close. When I looked again, the glow was gone. The next morning, I called a local realtor pretending to be interested in buying the Miller property. He sounded confused. "You mean the old Miller lot? There's nothing there anymore, it's just weeds." I hung up and looked out the window again. The house was still there, clear as day, old roof, broken porch, curtains fluttering in the wind. I decided I had to see it myself. I started across the frozen field around 4 p.m., the sun low and orange. The walk should have taken 5 minutes, but halfway there, something strange happened. The distance didn't seem to change. The house stayed far away, no matter how long I walked. The field seemed to stretch. I turned around to go back, and my grandmother's house looked smaller than before, like I'd walked miles. The wind picked up, and with it the faint smell of smoke. Then I saw movement. A figure standing at the edge of the Miller porch. A woman. She raised her hand and waved. Slowly. When I finally reached the porch, the air felt thick, like the world had stopped breathing. The front door hung open, hinges squealing. Inside was dust, soot, and silence. Furniture half-burned, photos melted into the wall, and in the center of the room, a mirror, cracked, covered in ash. I looked into it and gasped. It wasn't showing me. It was showing my own house, my kitchen, my couch, my reflection inside it, and behind me in the reflection stood someone else, a woman with gray hair wearing my grandmother's old nightgown. I turned around, but the house was empty. Then from the far room, I heard whispering, soft, almost like humming. When I followed it, I found an old photo album, on the floor untouched by fire. The pages showed my grandmother, young, smiling, standing outside this very house. But in every picture, there was another figure standing in the distance. A woman, blurry, always facing the camera. In the last photo, the woman wasn't in the background anymore. She was standing right beside my grandmother, and she looked exactly like me. I ran all the way back across the field. When I reached my porch, I turned back. The house across the field was gone, just open land. No structure, no light, nothing. That night, I packed my things. But before I left, I looked one last time out the kitchen window. The field was dark. Still. Then, just for a second, a flicker of light appeared in the exact spot where the house had stood, and I swear, I heard my grandmother's voice again whispering, "You shouldn't have gone across the field. They say there's a line between the living and the dead, a field we aren't meant to cross, but curiosity always finds a way." That was the house across the field, only on Dreadful Screams. My name is Ethan Clark, and last winter I lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the east side of Seattle. It wasn't much, peeling paint, leaky pipes, but the rent was cheap and the neighbors were quiet. At least they used to be. First time it happened was on a Tuesday. Around 3:03 a.m. I was half asleep when I heard it. Knock, knock, 2 gentle taps on the door. I froze, listening. No one knocked that late. I waited, thinking maybe I'd imagined it. But when I checked the peephole, there was no one. Just the hallway light buzzing, empty. I went back to bed, shrugged it off. But the next night it happened again. Same time, same 2 knocks, 3:03 a.m. For 3 nights in a row, it happened exactly the same way. 2 slow knocks, never 3, never 1. I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Valdez, if she'd heard anything. She said she hadn't, but she looked nervous, like she wanted to say something else. That night I stayed up, determined to catch whoever it was, 59 a.m. I sat in my living room, lights off, watching the door. 3:03 a.m. Knock, knock. I jumped up and opened it fast. No one. Just the sound of the elevator at the end of the hall. And yet, my hallway security camera didn't catch anyone either. No movement. No figure. Just static for exactly 10 seconds before the knocking sound started. The following evening, I came home from work to find a note taped to my door. It said in messy handwriting, "Don't answer the second knock. No name. No explanation." I tore it down, confused. That night I couldn't sleep. Every little creak made my skin crawl. At 3:03 it came again. Knock, knock. I didn't move, didn't breathe. But then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Good. You're learning." By the 3rd week I'd stopped going. Out at night. I installed 3 extra locks, a camera inside, even a motion alarm. Still, the knocks came. 2, always 2. I started noticing strange things too. My TV turning on by itself at 3 a.m., my clock glitching, always freezing at 3:03 before jumping to 3:04, and sometimes I'd wake up facing the door, as if I'd been standing there in my sleep. One night I saw it. The peephole was dark, completely blacked out. Someone was standing on the other side, covering it. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. I picked up my phone to record, and in that moment, 2 slow knocks echoed. Again, But this time, they came from inside the apartment, from the closet. I stared at the door, trembling. Knock. Knock. I called 911. The operator stayed on the line, telling me to leave the apartment. When the police arrived, they found no one. But inside the closet, on the wall, someone had written something, over and over. I knocked first. The next day, the apartment manager came by with maintenance. They checked the wiring, cameras, everything. Then he looked at me strangely and said, "Mr. Clark, I don't remember renting this unit twice. I didn't understand. He showed me the records. Apparently another tenant named Ethan Clark had already lived there. 3 years ago. He died in that apartment." 3 a.m. That night I packed my things. I was done. But before I could leave, the lights flickered and I heard the sound again. Knock, knock. Except this time the second knock didn't stop. It echoed, deep, resonant, like the whole building was answering back. My reflection in the window began to blur like it was breathing. Then, it smiled. Knock, knock. I looked back at the door. The handle began to turn, slowly. When I came to, I was sitting on the floor. It was daylight. My door was wide open. The hallway camera had stopped recording at 3:03 a.m., but the final frame showed me, standing outside my own apartment, staring at the door, knocking, twice. If you ever hear a knock at your door in the middle of the night, wait. Count them carefully because the first one is a warning, the second one that means they're already inside. This was, don't answer the second knock. Exclusively on Dreadful Screams.
It's been waiting for you.
I rented the cabin last December. After everything that had happened that year, losing my job, my relationship falling apart, I needed space. Somewhere silent, isolated, away from the noise of the city and the pity of my friends. The listing said it was a writer's retreat by a private lake, secluded and serene. The photos looked old but comforting. A little wooden cabin surrounded by snow, smoke curling from its chimney. I drove nearly 5 hours north to get there. The last 20 minutes were pure forest. Long, winding roads where trees leaned in so close they nearly touched the car roof. By the time I reached the cabin, the sun had started to dip below the trees. And that's when I met Wendell, the owner. He was thin, with hands that shook slightly as he handed me a heavy brass key. He didn't say much. Just, "You're staying till Sunday?" I nodded. He looked toward the lake and muttered, "Stay inside after dark. The lake carries voices." I laughed nervously, thinking it was just some local superstition. He didn't laugh back. The cabin itself was small but neat. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a little wood stove that crackled when lit. No TV, no signal. It felt clean in a way cities never do. The air smelled like pine and snow. There was a dock that stretched into the lake and maybe 20 yards long. The water was completely frozen over, flat and pale like glass. And across the lake there was a tree line, dark, dense, endless. That first night, I slept better than I had in months. No car horns, no texts, just the groaning of ice expanding under the surface of the lake. But at around 2 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like footsteps, soft ones, crunching snow outside my window. They circled the cabin slowly, then stopped right by the porch. When I looked outside, there was nothing. No prints. Just the wind brushing snow across the wooden steps. The second night, it happened again. Only this time I was awake to hear it. I was sitting by the fire reading when something tapped the window. Once. Then again. Rhythmic. Like someone drumming a single finger against the glass. I froze. The tapping stopped. And then came a sound I will never forget. A faint female voice, almost a whisper, carried across the frozen lake. It said my name. Daniel. It was so clear that I dropped the book. I ran outside, barefoot in the snow, scanning the lake. But there was no one. Only my breath fogging in the cold. The next morning, I found wet footprints on the porch. Bare feet, small, leading from the edge of the lake straight to my door, and stopping there. I tried to convince myself it was some animal or snow, melting oddly. But when I touched one of the prints, the snow was still damp, like the person had been standing there moments before. That night, the whispering came again, closer this time, and softer, like someone talking just outside the door. I turned off the lantern, sat in the dark, and listened. Through the silence, through the soft wind, I heard words that made no sense. You left me here. It's so cold. I didn't sleep. The fourth night, I set up my phone near the window to record the sounds. When I played it back in the morning, most of it was static. But near the end, I heard something, clear as day. A woman's voice whispering, "Look under the dock." That day I walked down to the frozen lake. The air was so cold it burned when I breathed. When I knelt by the dock and brushed away the snow, I saw something dark beneath the ice. At first it looked like driftwood. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized it was shaped like a person, curled up, long hair drifting in the frozen water. Stumbled back so fast I nearly slipped. When I looked again, the shape was gone, just bubbles and cracks in the ice. That night, I lit a fire, poured whiskey, and tried to calm down. But at exactly 3 a.m., there was a soft knock from beneath the floorboards. I stared at the spot. It came again. 3 knocks, slow and deliberate. I lifted the rug and saw faint moisture seeping between the boards, like water was pushing up from below. And then I heard it again. My name, whispered just inches away from under the cabin. "Daniel, let me in." I drove into the nearest town that morning and about 20 minutes away. There was a small diner called Lynn's Cafe. When I mentioned Wendell's cabin, the woman behind the counter froze. She said, "You didn't stay there overnight, did you?" I told her I had been there 4 nights. She put her hand to her mouth and said, "That place should have been torn down years ago." Then she told me the story. 15 years ago, Wendell's daughter Clara drowned in that lake. She had been playing on the dock when the ice cracked. Wendell tried to save her, but no one ever found the body. The lake was too deep, too dark. Since then, anyone who stayed there reported the same thing. A woman's voice calling their name, wet footprints leading from the lake, and sometimes the sound of someone tapping from beneath the floor. When I drove back, Wendell was waiting near the path to the cabin. He looked older than before, pale, shaking. I shouted, "Why didn't you tell me about your daughter?" He just stared at the lake and said, "Because she doesn't belong there anymore, but she won't leave." Then he turned and walked into the trees, vanishing into the snow. That night, I planned to leave. I packed my things, threw my bag into the car. But when I turned the ignition, nothing. The engine wouldn't start. The headlights flickered once, then died. The snow had started again, heavy and silent. I went back inside to wait till morning. At 2:47 a.m., the power went out. No fire, no heat, only darkness. Then the tapping started again, louder this time, frantic. Windows, walls, floorboards, all at once, and in between each knock, a voice, whispering, begging. "It's so cold. Please just let me in. You promised. You left me here." I grabbed my flashlight and stepped toward the door, but stopped when I noticed something. Water was seeping in through the bottom of the door frame, not dripping, flowing. Within seconds, the floor was covered in a thin layer of freezing water, spreading from the walls inward. The cabin groaned, the wood bending and popping like something alive beneath it. Then from outside, I saw movement. A figure, a woman, standing in the lake, waist deep, head tilted. Her hair hung over her face, her skin glistened with ice. She raised a pale hand and pointed at me. I backed away, tripping over the chair. The lantern fell, the glass shattered, and the room plunged into complete darkness, except for the faint blue glow coming from the window. When I looked up, she was right outside, face pressed to the glass, mouth moving soundlessly, and then the glass cracked, water burst inward, the lights went out, and everything went black. I woke up lying on the frozen shore. It was morning, the sky pale gray, my clothes were dry. The cabin was gone, completely gone. Only the rotting dock remained, stretching over the frozen lake. I still had the brass key in my hand. When I looked toward the horizon, I could have sworn I saw her, standing just beneath the surface of the ice, watching, smiling. I got in my car and drove until I saw the first highway sign. I didn't stop. It's been 6 months since that night. I've moved to another state. No lakes, no snow. But sometimes, late at night, I am when the world is quiet and I'm half asleep, I swear I still hear it. The sound of gentle tapping on glass, and a voice whispering from far, far away. The lake never gives back what it takes. Thank you for listening to Dreadful Screams. Remember, never stay near the water after dark.